It's that time again. No, I'm not referring to the time for getting upset discussing politics with relatives over dinner. And I don't mean the time to stuff yourself to the gills, to prepare to love people by getting into a war early morning. The next day, purchasing plastic goods. I mean that time when the enlightened ones among Christianity troll social media to inform blind people like me that Christmas is pagan. Did you know that Christmas is a pagan holiday? Did you know that Christians shouldn't celebrate Christmas because it's pagan? And so on. Yesterday, one of these posts snared my eye on Facebook, Internet Island of Misfit Toys. With this header, why are Christians still putting up Christmas trees? What followed was the routine drivel about how we Christmassy Christians betray Jesus, thereby placing our eternal salvation into jeopardy by pandering to the pagan gods such as Kris Kringle, Frosty the Snowman, and diabolical reindeer Rudolph. Receiving this dire warning, I wondered, do these killjoys know how inconsistent they are? I mean, many of them are married, and a lot of those people have wedding rings. And had veils at their weddings. Traditional dress. Traditional, but not to Jesus. To other peoples outside of the fold of the disciples of Jesus, all our wedding traditions could be called pagan. For that matter, why do Christians learn astronomy and math? In the time of Jesus, astronomy and mathematics, as well as the dread astrology, were one and the same thing. There really wasn't much difference between solving a geometry problem and giving a horoscope. In fact, our Bible finishes with a great example of this, the book of Revelation, which is an astronomic report, astrology all over the place, and a book of Numbers. It's a report full of gods, Mediterranean sky entities other than Yahweh. By the logic of these anti-pagan Christians, why do they persist in calling the book of Revelation sacred scripture? The stupidity can grow absurdly with this sort of thinking. Why do Christians sing, dance, and party at their worship services? After all, pagans did that wildly as they persecuted Christians, having them burned to death in colosseums or fed to wild beasts. Whenever a Christian anti-pagan approaches me with his or her Christmas bashing, I always ask them what day it is, and it never fails. They always respond by telling me the day of the week. For instance, Wednesday. And then I'll ask them, and so yesterday was Tuesday, right? And they'll affirm that. Then I ask, tomorrow will be Thursday, correct? Of course, they invariably say. They go to pieces when I then greet them as a fellow pagan. Today, Wednesday, is the day of Wodan, Odin. So swiftly the All-Father rides the Bifrost on Sleipnir, his 8-legged stallion. It is so sensible for him to be associated with Vodnesdag, or Wednesday, for after this hump day, the rest of the week follows quickly. Once one of these Christmas killjoys, a Latin American, stopped me at that point, informing me that he doesn't call this day Wednesday, but rather Miércoles. To which I promptly commended him for honoring Hermes, or Mercury, the swift messenger god of Mediterranean peoples. He was following his Latin pagan roots by each week honoring Mercury with the Day of Mercury. Talk about inconsistency. These people get so upset, so hung up with Christmas being held once per year, but they don't bat an eye about at least 52 weekly celebrations annually of the god of the sun, Sunandaig, Sunday, or the moon goddess, Monandag, Lunes, Moon Day, Monday, the day of the moon. They reject Christmas Day, but each week honor Mars, or Tyre, or Tiw in the Old English, the god of war, Tuesdag, or Martes, Tuesday. All you Marvel comics and movie fans should always remember the origin of Thor's Day. I mean Hrumsdag, the day of Thor, Thursday. Or would it be more orthodox, and by orthodox I mean more Mediterranean, to call it Jueves, after all things Jovian, as in Jupiter, Zupater, Zeuspater, Father Zeus Day. This is followed by Friday, or Freya's Day, or Venus's Day, if you call it Viernes, like venereal disease. And then at the end we have Saturn's Day, or Saturday, or Sabado. In ancient Hebrew, the word for the planet Saturn is Shabbatai, from the Babylonian Sukkoth. You'd have to call that pagan too, wouldn't you, folks? And what happens when these good Christian people learn that the Bible begins with a Persian-authorized mythic surrejoinder to the Babylonian creation epic Enuma Elish? Genesis 1 couldn't have been written without the Babylonian creation myth first existing. Or what happens when they find out that it was Persian-authorized scribes who gave the Israelites their entire Exodus narrative? As well as the Satan, angels, Pharisees, sounds like Farsi, the language they speak in Persia. And resurrection ideas where God turns righteous people into stars. I guess we Christians are pretty screwed, since everything Hebrew is already blended with the pagan. Folks, every day is pagan. The whole week comes from different pantheons of pagan gods. Stop placing severe monotheism into the Old and New Testaments. It's rarely encountered in the scriptures. I'm not saying monotheism is untrue, mind you. It just took our ancestors quite a while to arrive at it. New Testament communities were composed of mostly henotheistic Israelites, recognizing God's sky servants while exclusively honoring their patron god, the God of Israel. They knew well of the 7 glorious other-than-human persons, the wanderers, the planets, that the days of the week are named after. Each of them sky gods on the ecliptic pathway in the sky vault. The book called Revelation showcases this celestial stuff. It has many Mediterranean sky entities, otherwise known as gods or angelic beings. It's on every page of the book of Revelation. And we Christians still maintain a ghost of this ancient tradition, birthed in the pagan, filtered by many pagan and polytheistic skylore traditions. Here are some important things to keep in mind with all this Christmas bashing silliness. The first should be rather obvious, but strangely is elusive to so many Christian dunderheads. Symbols have at least 2 meanings. So while an apple might mean original sin to one person, it simply means lunch to another. Who's correct? They both are, ladies and gentlemen. You might have heard it said, in the beginning was the Word. Okay, but don't believe that. In the beginning was the interpretation. We need to get over ourselves. Symbols are multivalent. No one interpreter owns the patent on what something means. The second thing to understand demands going back over this blog post and substituting the word pagan with another term. Pagan, you see, is a much abused word. There weren't any first century pagans. As it turns out, there weren't any first century Jews or Christians either, but we'll get to that business later on. This was because it wasn't until after Constantine that Christian elites coined the term pagan, labeling it onto any of their fellow Greco-Romans who wouldn't get with the program. When reading the Bible, instead of pagan, use Gentile or non-Israelite. Third thing to keep in mind is that Christians who see evil more pervasive than good in the world are pathetic, and their gospel must be false. Not only must it be false, it must be called out as such. It is tragic when Catholics approach things with a fundamentalist condemning there is absolutely nothing good about it attitude. Such a position is incompatible with the true gospel and ontologically absurd. It is also diametrically opposed to sacramentality, the essentially Catholic principle that sees God in all things. So in Sacramentality, the early church saw truth, goodness, and beauty in the Mediterranean and Celtic and Germanic feasts, symbols, and practices. So she baptized them, brought out Christ in them. It turns out that Sol Invictus, the Winter Solstice feast of the unconquerable sun, S-U-N, is the perfect occasion to celebrate the truly unconquerable light of the world, Christ, the Sun, S-O-N. Our calendar we share with the polytheistic and so-called pagans became our catechism. The so-called pagan winter solstice is a fitting time to celebrate Christ's nativity, not just his birthday. Of course, Jesus wasn't born on December 25th. Christmas is far more than just happy birthday Jesus. Don't oversimplify it. It's much richer than that. Now, with Christmas trees going up and Christians decking the halls, other Christians, with too much time on their hands, want to get morally superior and talk about how Christmas sucks. Folks, 2020 has been a long, trying year. Frankly, it has been a brutal year. We have to ask ourselves, how are we healing people by dumping on human warmth? Now, I admit, there are many things about the way we Western people celebrate Christmas with too much materialism, and that needs to be critically reflected on, challenged, and perhaps transformed in many ways. But people putting up Christmas trees in their house, being devil worshippers? Who needs a Christianity that holds that stupidity?